Human beings are born, grow up to be free actors, and die. Jean-Paul Sartre, a French existentialist philosopher, would claim that the human condition is of absolute freedom. We are thrown into a world, perhaps a harsh world, and must confront it and live in it. What we make out of it at the end of the day is totally our choice. There are no objective guidelines to be discovered outside of ourselves to aid us in how we choose. The world, so to speak, is what we make out of it. Our life is the same. And that we are free, we are totally responsible for our actions. Now, when learning about Sartre, there appears two sides of the coin with him. From his perspective, there is no God. Believing in his existence may even appear as an absurd belief, especially when confronted with the great evils that have occurred in human history, for example, World War II. Life has no spiritual purpose. There is no objective morality to follow. The world itself offers us nothing in terms of what is good or bad. Furthermore, life apparently gives us no certainties. Thus, we are truly alone and free to do what we like with that aloneness. For aloneness is a label that Sartre applied to our predicament. Still, on the other hand, we are free. There's a chance to acknowledge this and act upon it to freely develop ourselves. This freedom can give us power to be truly responsible in living a life that we want. Although human individuals obviously exist, that's all Sartre can say about our supposed nature. He writes, quote, "If existence really does precede essence, there is no explaining things away by reference to a fixed and given human nature," end quote. With no God or objective order, what Sartre means is that we define ourselves. There is no essence or nature to the human being. We, so to speak, give it an essence or nature. This can lead to despair, thinks Sartre. Knowing that we have absolute freedom in this world is daunting. It additionally makes us realize that we are what we have made ourselves become. When we fail an accomplishable task, we cannot point to external sources to blame, for instance. And when an individual acts, only he or she chooses. Sartre does nevertheless offer some advice, if we can really call it that, on how to live a life in this meaningless world. He believes we should be true to ourselves. Like other existentialists, he was against inauthenticity. That is, an individual should not model his or her life according to others or social conventions. In regards to thinking and philosophizing, only the individual can decide. Competing philosophical schools of thought are just that, competing. Now, in studying philosophy, it becomes quickly apparent that many different worldviews are held. Sartre's, although having an internal consistency to it, does not appear ultimately sound. What if God does exist? Or if God doesn't exist, what if there is an objective essence or nature to the human being despite that? Sartre's philosophy must enter moral relativism. Why, for example, complain, as he rightfully did, about war crimes in Vietnam? He could, to be sure, just try to change other people's mind over the supposedly subjective relative matter. What he couldn't do, however, is claim that something really wrong happened. Yet most people's moral sense suggests that acts can be classified as objectively evil, and sometimes objectively good as well, by the way, of course. Now, in justifying this, we don't and shouldn't need to appeal to majority opinion alone. This common view itself seems objectively ingrained in us as human beings, in our nature, actually, despite us often not living up to these standards. A world where everybody thought that right and wrong don't really exist, so there are no standards, would not likely produce a friendly world, to say the least. Finally, we should be cautious about Sartre's idea about authenticity. If being true to oneself is to do something that's objectively immoral, then that's not something to be encouraged. Nor should we carelessly disregard social conventions or rules where they don't seem to suit us as a single individual. They have their place, even though they can and have gone wrong sometimes. And sometimes they do need to be challenged, including by a single individual. Sartre believes that we are free to choose. That we probably are. But it should be a search to choose what is true, noble, right, and good objectively. I am the amateur logician, and I love reflecting on philosophy, and if you'd like to join me, join me. I would love to have you in my community. Go to my website at amateurlogician.com and let's think about these classic books from all sorts of different perspectives.